Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm a bit confused because I've listened to the proposals given by the good senator of Nairobi and also the good senator, the distinguished senator from Bungoma, in terms of this issue of the solutions that we can be able to come up with. When I look at the Constitution, Article 221, in terms of, 222, the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir, is very clear. It says, if the Appropriation Act for financial year has not been assented to, or is not likely to be assented to, by the beginning of that financial year, the National Assembly may authorize the withdrawal of money from a consolidated fund. I equally look at the PFM Act, Mr. Speaker, sir, Section 134, which talks about the same being a problem in terms of the county appropriation bill for a financial year has not been assented to. We are in a situation now, Mr. Speaker, sir, where the National Assembly has assented to into an appropriation bill which we have challenged because of the issue of DORA. I like the idea of borrowing from other jurisdictions. Like the United States, Mr. Speaker, sir, which is different from this country, there are 12 appropriation bills. There are those which are considered mandatory spending, or rather continuing resolutions, which allow legislators time for them to be able to sort out their mess and agreeing on how money should be spent out by the national government, or in this case, the federal government. I think what we need to ask ourselves is whether the suggestions we are coming up with here, Mr. Speaker, sir, will violate the Constitution, because there's an appropriation act which we are saying it's illegal, which the law and also the Constitution is very clear that it is illegal. County governments have come up with budgets which they cannot generally come up with those budgets without CARA. So we are in a situation where we are being confronted with illegalities. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't see a situation where Treasury can release money that they do not have. So, in my view, and this is a very interesting time, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, sir, that these things are happening now when we can be able, when we are talking about a referendum. Because when we have only one appropriation bill, which can only be altered by a supplementary appropriation act, then it puts us in limbo. What can we consider as mandatory spending so that the government does not come into a complete shutdown? What we are confronted now, Mr. Speaker, sir, is where we are relying on one appropriation act or other bill that the two houses have not agreed upon, and the county government are suffering, yet the national government is proceeding. I'm not certain that we can actually come up with any solution as we speak right now, unless we say, then we are okaying and giving an okay to the Appropriation Act, which we all know it is illegal. It cannot come before the DORA. So I think the only solution here, Mr. Speaker, sir, is where we expedite this issue of mediation, we agree, and we follow the law. Because the moment we start saying we are borrowing from other jurisdictions which are not supported by our own constitution, then we'll be opening a Pandora's box that we may never be able to close. This is a very awkward moment and a very interesting time for this country, because we are learning. So that if the Constitution comes tomorrow, the referendum, when we talk about amending the Constitution, then we have to ask ourselves, is this one appropriation bill good for this country, or is it bad? Can we follow other jurisdictions like the United States, where they have 12 appropriation bills, where they have the continual resolution, which makes sure that people are paid their salary? Narrow County, we are lucky. Maybe we get money from the Masai Mara, and we are able to continue paying salary. Nairobi is lucky, because what about the other counties? So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think, personally, it is good that this is happening now, that we can be able to reason, but the only solution, in my view, Mr. Speaker, sir, is if we follow the Constitution. I disagree that the Constitution was not, I disagree with the sentiments of my dear brother, that law was made for man, but not man, what did you say? Yeah. Man's own law. No, it's just that I'm standing here and I'm really confused about the solution that we have. Because if we have the Constitution, which we must abide with, and this House is on record saying we are abiding by the Constitution. And that is why yesterday wisdom prevailed in this House that we did not behave like hooligans in the lower house and saying we are throwing away our legislation, whereby the law is very clear.
What is it, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to really ask whether it's in order for the Senator to insinuate my suggestion is actually suggesting that we do away with the law and not abide by it. Yet what I was calling for was a more pragmatic approach to the laws that we already have, Mr. Speaker. Innovative ways of interpreting the laws that we actually have, Mr. Speaker. And not just
Very
innovative, based on precedent, before we had devolution, and currently from other jurisdictions with a similar framework of fiscal decentralization as ours. That is how the law is read from the beginning to the end, 360 and all around, not word for word like the Bible, Mr. Speaker.
And in spirit.
And in spirit.
Very well. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I agree with my brother.
Yes.
That in times of difficulties, you have to come up with very innovative measures to be able to navigate those difficulties. But now, if we are bound by the rule of law, and it says, if you look at the PFM Act, Section 134, on the issue of CARA, you look at the Constitution, 222, there's no Appropriation Act. If we agree with the Appropriation Act, there's no, which money are they going to get that we've not been able to divide? So, even though we want to be creative, I think the creativity now will have to come based on the earlier suggestion by Senator Sakaja on the country now relooking on its budget-making process and moving into a zero-based budget. Because we can tell how much money did the county of Narok spend last year on certain projects. I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, currently Treasury has called all the national government ministries to be able to submit in line item budgets because they are trying to cut down on spending. So I think, in conclusion, if I clarify on my earlier points, I wasn't trying to demean whatsoever the suggestion made by the distinguished senator from Nairobi. I was just trying to be realistic in terms of the next steps. And finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, in my view, I think what we ought to do is that we have to pray so hard that wisdom prevail on the lower house and the national government so that we can mediate on these things and then push money to the people, not to the governors. We are sending money to the counties, not governors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.